All right, let's get right into it. Manipulation. It's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but what's actually going on inside the mind of someone who's a master at it? Today, we're not just talking psychology. Nope. We're going a level deeper into the brain itself to ask a really fascinating question. Can you actually see a manipulator's signature in their neural wiring?
You know that feeling, right? That unsettling sense where you walk away from a conversation just feeling off, confused, maybe a little guilty, or like you just agreed to something you totally didn't want to. It's like you've been expertly outmaneuvered, but you can't for the life of you figure out how. That exact feeling, that's what we're digging into today. And this kind of thing happens through some pretty well-known tactics. You've got gaslighting, right, where someone makes you question your own reality. Then there's guilt tripping, which makes you feel like you're responsible for their feelings. Love bombing, that overwhelming flood of affection designed to get control. And of course, reverse psychology, pushing you to do one thing by telling you to do the opposite. These are the classic tools. But what does the brain of the person using these tools actually look like?
Well, to understand the who behind all this, we've got to talk about a concept in psychology called the dark triad. Now, this isn't some clinical diagnosis. Think of it more like a constellation of personality traits that tend to show up in people who are really, really good at manipulation. So, the dark triad. This idea has been around since 2002, and it's made up of three specific and often overlapping traits. You've got narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Just think of them as three different flavors of a dark personality, and each one brings something unique to the table. And this table here breaks it down so perfectly. So first step, narcissism. This is all about that grandiose sense of entitlement. It's captured perfectly by that thought, I have been compared to famous people. Then you've got Machiavellianism. This is the cold, calculated, strategic side of manipulation. The whole mindset is there are things you should hide from others. And finally, psychopathy. This is defined by callousness, by impulsivity. And the thought process, it's chilling. Payback needs to be quick and nasty. Okay, so if those are the personality types, the really big question for scientists has been, is this all just behavior? Or is there something fundamentally different about the brain's wiring in these individuals? Can we actually peek inside and find a unique neural signature for the dark triad? A recent study set out to do exactly that. And how they did it is pretty clever. So first they got 200 people and had them fill out a questionnaire to see where they scored on the dark triad scale. Simple enough. Then they put each person into an fMRI machine. But here's the key. They weren't asked to do anything, just to lie there, be at rest, and stare at a little crosshair. This is all about measuring the brain's baseline, its natural default state. And finally, and this is the really cool part, they unleashed an AI on all that brain data, a machine learning model to just hunt through the scans and find any hidden patterns that matched up with those personality scores. So, what did the AI find? It found something pretty remarkable. A clear, consistent pattern. A neural fingerprint suggesting that the brains of people high in dark triad traits are, well, fundamentally off balance. Now, to get what that means, we need a quick intro to two super important brain networks. First, I want you to meet your brain's CEO. This is what's called the Central Executive Network, or the CEN. This is the part of your brain that kicks into high gear for intense focus, for making strategic plans, for getting difficult, goal-oriented stuff done. When you're solving a tough problem, your CEN is lit up. And on the other side of the coin, you have your brain's conscience. This is the default mode network, or DMN. This network is what's humming along when your mind is just wandering, when you're reflecting on yourself, daydreaming about the future, or, and this is key, trying to understand what someone else is thinking or feeling. It's absolutely crucial for empathy. So here it is. the big discovery. In people who scored high on dark triad traits, the AI found this incredibly distinct pattern right there at the resting baseline. Their CEO network, it showed increased activity, a much higher level of baseline energy. It's like it's chronically revved up, always ready to go. And at the exact same time, their conscience network showed decreased activity. It was dampened, quieter, running on lower energy.
The researchers themselves summed it up perfectly with this quote. They called it a neural profile of enhanced goal-directed vigilance coupled with dampened introspective activity. In other words, a brain that is hardwired for being on high alert for goals, that's the overactive CEO, while at the same time having its self-reflection and empathy circuits, the conscience, turned way down.
And get this, when they drilled down into the data, they found the strongest connection of all was between that supercharged CEO network and one trait in particular, Machiavellianism. And that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Machiavellianism is all about cold, strategic planning and manipulation, tasks that would absolutely rely on that executive part of the brain.
Okay, so we've got the brain scan, we've got the neural fingerprint, but what does any of this actually mean for those real-world behaviors we were talking about in the beginning? How does this off-balanced brain actually translate into being manipulative? Well, this is why it all matters so much. Think about it. An overactive CEO network might just provide the extra cognitive horsepower you'd need for the incredibly demanding job of constant scheming and lying. I mean, it takes a ton of mental energy to keep all your stories straight. And at the same time, a dampened conscience network could directly explain that lack of empathy and self-reflection. If the part of your brain that helps you feel what others feel is always turned down low, it becomes a whole lot easier to exploit them. This all suggests these aren't just bad choices. There might be a real biological basis at play here. And that leaves us with a final, really provocative question. This research gives us a peek into the very wiring that could be behind this kind of behavior. It points to a brain that might just be, by its very nature, more tuned to strategy than it is to empathy. So, if we start to understand the wiring, does it, and maybe more importantly, should it, change how we see the person behind the manipulation? That is definitely something to think about.